Okay, we are a long way, but I would like to one thing that I got afraid because I am always very afraid that things are cyclical.
Mhm.
Okay, one thing that got me slightly not afraid, I would say, but it wouldn't be nice if it happens with all this happening. Do you think that the Russian people, the Russian population, could become a little bit Western phobic? Could things not now, but maybe in the way history goes? Do you think things could change, or socially it's so different that it could be nothing to do with that?
Yeah. Well, again, obviously, it's a very complicated question, and Russians are not this monolith that have the same opinion, right? Russians have different opinions, but I would say Russians are. They're sort of neither European nor Asian. They're sort of this great in between. Can you guys hear me? Okay. Okay, because I no longer see you on my screen. Okay. 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 Sure. So the point here is that Russians are, if I were to define the Russian civilization as sort of the great between, right? It's between Asia, it's between Europe, it has links to both. It's perhaps in certain times of history, it had greater influence coming from Western Europe. And today, obviously, there is this partly politically necessitated turn towards Asia. But Russians are sort of neither nor, but of course, the majority of the population, genetically speaking, is, Slavic. Obviously, it's a multicultural place, but a lot of Russians are Slavic, Eastern European, right? So they would perceive themselves on that level as more European than Asian. So I don't really see a long-term turn away from Europe, especially, I would say, continental Europe. I would say Britain is sort of its own different animal because the relations between Russia and Britain have been poor and competitive and hostile for a large chunk of the past several hundred years. So thinking of continental Europe, I personally think that as the world becomes multipolar and, the US is sort of a fading hegemon, and there's perhaps, I know the US tried to exert more influence on Europe since the escalation of the Ukrainian crisis, and in many ways it has, for instance, cutting off Russian energy. But I see that as a temporary obstacle. I think geographic proximity is a very important factor you cannot remove. So I think at some point there is going to be an improvement between the relationship between Russia and major European countries. Of course, I'm very hopeful those countries would be Germany and France. If you look at geopolitics, a relationship between Germany and France, Germany and Russia is one that both Britain and the United States and Canada have tried to prevent in many ways because of German industry. Germany being an industrial powerhouse, Russia being a resource powerhouse. So
yes.
having this industrial / resource interaction on the continent in Eurasia would sort of minimize the power of both the UK, the US, and Canada. So that has been one of the reasons why Russia has been, I hope, temporarily cut off from Germany. But if Russians could reestablish a relationship with Germans after World War II, having lost 27 million people, then the current crisis is not really comparable to that. And I would say Russians, even in the wake of World War II, were quite reasonable. Of course, there was an anti-German sentiment, but Russians, for instance, Russia has many cemeteries for fallen soldiers, for fallen Nazi soldiers. I mean, it's kind of shocking. And they're being treated with respect as these are soldiers that died on our land. They're being taken care of. Germany also has access to them. So I see that if you can come back from that, sort of this absolute destruction and the loss of such a huge percentage of the population, a war that affected every single person in the country in many ways, then you can come back from the current crisis. It's not really comparable to that. It's very different. Obviously, we live in a different time. There's sort of 4G warfare and all these other factors, economic warfare. It's not necessarily just blood. Of course, Russian soldiers are spilling blood in the battlefields of the Ukrainian territory, but I don't think it's comparable to World War II. So I feel like if you can come back from that, and then in the 19th century, you had the Napoleonic War. So for Russians, World War II is called the Great Patriotic War. In the 19th century, it was the Napoleonic War that was known as the Great Patriotic War. And it was renamed after World War II for that reason. So again, if you can sort of reestablish a relationship with France after that, and you can reestablish a relationship with Germany after World War II, I don't really see why you couldn't reestablish a relationship with continental Europe specifically. That would be my interest between Russia and those countries. It's sort of a natural relationship because of not just historical ties, but geographic proximity. We have to get along at some point. And obviously, you know, if Russian energy is one of the easiest ways to reestablish that relationship, because that was something that was driving the, you know, European prosperity for a long time.
Sure.